To me, Beyond Good and Evil, or BGE as it's known in the fandom, is a perfect example of something that's greater than the sum of its parts. And that's not to say that those individual parts weren't great to begin with, but as a complete package, it's a really beautiful game. And I don't just mean its presentation. I mean, the visuals were certainly decent for the time, but it's when everything comes together, the character relationships, the music, the environmental design, the sheer ambition of the thing, that's when its true brilliance shines through. There are moments of serenity, there are scenes that really tug at your heartstrings. It's just got all these pockets of charm and excitement and surprise. It's strange, really, because usually when I play a high-quality game, I might come away feeling impressed or energized, but when I sit down and play Beyond Good and Evil, it's more like... This might be one of the most pretentious things I've ever said about a video game, but it's more like the sort of feeling you get when you see a nice sunset or a great view. It's just a straightforward, honest sense of like, wow, I'm just glad this thing exists and that I discovered it, you know? Like, yes, it's impressive, yes, it's energizing, but even stripping all that away, it's just a pleasure to play. Hello, I'm Peter from Triple Jump, and today I'll be talking about what Beyond Good and Evil means to me. My first impressions of Beyond Good and Evil were almost second to none, actually. Right from the outset, I loved the almost cinematic presentation of the narrative. I found the world super intriguing. I thought the music was incredible pretty much from the first note. But even all that being said, I still didn't realise then just how significant the game would actually become for me in the end. At the time, it seemed like, you know, a brilliant new game, but I'd played other brilliant new games before, and I was sure to play countless more after it. So, though I could immediately tell that I was going to have a great time with this, I could never have predicted, even from my amazing first impressions, that it would ultimately have the effect on me that it did. I was actually recommended BGE when I was about 12 years old by a girl in my class at school. I think she might have even lent me her copy to try out before I bought it myself, and my God, I am so pleased that she actually thought to suggest it to me, because this thing had absolutely no marketing presence at all. I'd never heard of it, nobody else I knew had ever heard of it, and that actually remained the case for years until it was released on Steam and had a bit of a renaissance. So I feel so lucky that my friend had firstly actually managed to stumble across it herself against all the odds, but then actually thought to share it with me, because things could have been a lot different otherwise. I actually wouldn't say that Beyond Good and Evil came at a significant time in my life, in that it would have had the same effect on me if I discovered it some years before or some years later. However, what I would say is that my discovery of Beyond Good and Evil, that in itself became a significant moment in my life, speaking as someone who went on to build a career so intrinsically linked with video games. So I'd played through all sorts of brilliant games in the years prior to getting BGE, of course, many of which left their mark on me in some way. But when it comes to games that I sort of arbitrarily describe as having a serious narrative, as it were, this was actually the first one I ever completed. So I had, by this point, 100%ed the likes of the Crashes and Spyros, Tomb 2, Tekken Tag, and so on. But I wouldn't really describe those as having a PG-13, thought-provoking cinematic narrative. And conversely, though I had played some other weighty story-driven games like MGS, Resident Evil, GTA 3, Time Splitters, I hadn't yet completed any of those. So Beyond Good and Evil was kind of the first game that ticked both boxes, and making my way through BGE, falling for the characters, unraveling the mystery, defeating the final boss, and then watching the ending cutscene play and having that satisfaction. That is how this game became so important to me. You know, here I am on YouTube, literally right now, many years after playing this for the first time, continuing to be blown away by the storytelling and cinematic potential of the video gaming medium. But if it wasn't for the eye-opening journey I took through Beyond Good and Evil in the early noughties, who knows where I would have ended up. I truly think this is one of the games that set me on the path that I'm on now. I think the reason I had so much praise to give when describing my first impressions of Beyond Good and Evil earlier on is not just because I really liked it from the outset, but because the game outright clicked for me immediately. You know, again, I didn't know at the time just how important it would eventually become. But yeah, the first 10 minutes of BGE tell you everything you need to know. And there aren't actually that many games I've played since then that have grabbed me in the same way from the very first level. BGE starts with an unexpectedly intense prologue, actually, where there's this alien airstrike, and then you fight a bunch of monsters in slow-mo with this amazing choral music, and then there's a boss fight, and all this is literally in the very first scene. As soon as that's done, though, Jade ends up passing out, and then when she wakes up, you're given a camera and told to take photographs of animals throughout your adventure, sort of Pokemon Snap style, and then you're free to just run around your lighthouse home and interact with the characters and enjoy the views, and the whole while there's this piano basically making sweet tender love to your ears, and that's it. That's when the game got me, like sort of the 10-minute mark. You know, almost as soon as you pick up the controller, BGE says to you, "Hey, welcome, I hope you like dramatic fight scenes and calmer, more tender moments and animal photography and great music." Unfortunately, I do like all those things, so it got me good. It's so hard to choose a favourite thing about the game. The camera in general is great, because not only do you get paid to take dozens of photos of animals, which is just super fun, but it's also integral to the story. It's essentially Jade's main weapon, as she's an investigative journalist who goes out to get evidence of a conspiracy. But that being said, though, I think there's one standout moment in BG that, irrespective of how much I love the camera, I just can't not mention. And indeed, if the game hadn't already clicked for me from the outset, then this sequence surely would have sealed the deal. The rooftop chase scene in which Jade flees from the alpha sections is absolutely stunning for the time. It's such a PS3, PS4 style moment that it's easy to forget that this game came out in 2003. Even the way it begins, with you vaulting over this pipe as you have done many times already in the game, results in this perfectly smooth transition from gameplay to an almost jump scare of a cutscene. And from that moment on, as the alphas charge you down, laughing and yelling behind you, you are no longer playing a game, you are in a movie. The sudden cuts to cinematic camera angles as you jump over obstacles, the scripted destruction of the rooftops around you, the seamless slow-mo segment as you're jogging along and it's all going off in the background. It's an incredible set piece even today, despite its visual limitations. But back then, it was something else entirely. I had never played anything quite like this before. Best of all, though, is the final sting of this sequence. You're running out of road, there's no escape, you're sure they're going to catch you, until you see your companion, Double H, waiting to grab you at the end of the building. But good God, the bait and switch. So your leap of faith falls short, and you're convinced you're just going to... I don't know, are you going to die? Are you going to die now? Who knows? But... fortunately, Dad goals, that's not going to stop him. He's still going to catch you. The whole chase is astounding, but this final punctuation of your friend being there when you needed them the most is my favourite moment, not only in the game, but I think in the PS2 era of gaming as a whole. I've played Beyond Good and Evil well over half a dozen times now. I ran it multiple times as a kid. I did a really special playthrough of it on PC when I first moved to uni, which I think really helped ground me in the unfamiliar surroundings. And I've since played it every couple of years. The most recent time would be the full playthrough of it I streamed right here on Triple Jump, actually. A little plug. And all being well with the upcoming and long overdue prequel, which I'm hoping we'll be getting in the next 2 or 3 years. I'll doubtless be going back to it for another run in anticipation of that. Prequel or not, though, it's never long before I return to BGE once again. You know, I don't need an excuse. Knowing how to sell this game, I'm afraid, was the million-dollar question in 2003. Beyond Good and Evil is regularly cited as one of the most underrated video games of all time, which is about the only way a studio could ever justify bringing out a new installment of a game that's going to be about 20 years old when BGE2 is released. It sold pretty terribly, but fortunately had a great cult following, and has now, as I said earlier, certainly had a renaissance, and a lot more people know about it. But ironically, I think it would be easier to sell the game to a new player today than it was back then, actually, partly because it was pretty cutting edge at the time. You know, nowadays, Beyond Good and Evil can simply be described as PS2 Uncharted in all but its setting. It's artistic, it's cinematic, it's brimming with touching moments and lovable characters that I don't think anyone would ever expect from a 2003 game like this. I'll say it again, BGE, even beyond its visuals, is something beautiful right to its core. And while many games have impressed me in different ways over the years, not one has left me just feeling so fortunate for having played it as Beyond Good and Evil. And that is what Beyond Good and Evil means to me.